The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning. Fancy paper, gold embossed lettering, the kind of invitation that screams money before you even open it. My name was written in perfect calligraphy. Emma Richardson. Inside, the confirmation of what I already expected. Maxwell Grant was marrying Malene Hawthorne in 3 weeks. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to access more stories like this. 5 years. 5 years since he left me 3 days before our own wedding, claiming I was incapable of true love. Now he wanted me to witness his happiness with a senator's daughter. The irony was almost poetic. I tossed the invitation onto my desk in my 47th floor office at Richardson Holdings. Manhattan stretched out before the panoramic windows, but my attention was focused on a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going alone. I wouldn't give Maxwell the satisfaction of seeing me as the lonely executive he always said I'd become. I needed someone real, not the Wall Street playboys who frequented the same social circles. Someone Maxwell would never expect to see by my side. Someone who proved I'd found something authentic, something he could never give me. The answer came completely out of the blue 2 days later. I was heading down to the lobby when I saw a man in his 30s struggling with several delivery boxes, a small child clinging to his leg. He had that kind of presence that gets attention without trying. Broad shoulders, confident movement, but there was kindness in the way he spoke to the little girl. "Daddy, are you going to be much longer?" Her voice was sweet, worried. "Just one more delivery, Sophie. I promise we'll get ice cream after." He knelt down to her height, tucking a strand of blonde hair that had escaped her ponytail. There was something in his patience, in the complete attention he gave his daughter, that made me stop. Maxwell had never shown that kind of care for anyone. "Excuse me," I approached, feeling the impulse of a risky decision. "Do you deliver here regularly?" He turned, blue eyes studying me with cautious curiosity. "Yes, ma'am. Ryan Mitchell Express Delivery. Any problem with the service?" "Quite the opposite." I took a deep breath, knowing I was about to do something completely out of character. "I have a proposition for you, a job offer." Sophie watched me with that typical childlike frankness, without filters or judgment. Ryan, on the other hand, seemed to be calculating whether I was a threat or just another eccentric executive. "What kind of job?" His voice had a soft accent, maybe from the Midwest. "I need an escort for a social event, a wedding. Nothing romantic, just presence. I'd pay $50,000 for one night." I saw his eyes widen slightly, but he didn't show the desperation I expected. Instead, there was something like suspicion. Why me? The question caught me off guard. Most people would have accepted immediately, because you seem real, genuine, and I need someone who is exactly that. He looked at Sophie, then back at me. "When would it be?" "Next Saturday. Hamptons. It would start at 3 in the afternoon, end around 11 at night. And what exactly would you expect from me?" "To be yourself. Talk, dance if they want us to dance, accompany me during the event. You don't need to pretend we're in love. You just need to be there." Sophie tugged on her dad's pants. "Daddy, is 50,000 a lot of money?" Ryan smiled, an expression that completely transformed his face. "It's a lot of money, yes, princess." He studied me for a long moment. "Why is this wedding so important?" "It's my ex-fiancée's wedding." The words came out rawer than I intended, and I refused to show up looking like the bitter woman he expects to find. Something shifted in his expression. Understanding, perhaps. "I see. So? I accept, but on one condition." I raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" "If at any point during the night you feel uncomfortable or want to leave, we leave. No questions asked." The condition surprised me. Maxwell had never cared about my comfort. Deal. We extended our hands, and as our fingers touched, I felt a small electric jolt. Ryan seemed to feel it too, because he hesitated for a split second before letting go of my hand. "I'll need your number," I said, trying to sound professional, "to coordinate the details." As we exchanged information, Sophie continued to observe me with childlike curiosity. "You're very pretty," she said suddenly. "You look like a princess." "Sophie," Ryan gently chastised her, but I smiled. "Thank you, Sophie. You're very pretty too." The little girl smiled, revealing 2 missing baby teeth. There was something in that smile that warmed a part of my chest I'd forgotten existed. "Well," Ryan picked up his boxes again, "I still have deliveries to make. Should we get in touch tomorrow to finalize the details?" Perfect. I watched them leave, Ryan adjusting the boxes, while Sophie held his free hand. There was something in the way they moved together, a natural rhythm of people who knew each other deeply, that made me wonder if I really knew what I was getting myself into. 3 days after the wedding, Ryan sent me a simple text. Sophie wants to know if you'd like to have dinner with us tomorrow. Nothing special, just homemade mac and cheese. I hesitated for almost an hour before replying. Family dinners weren't part of my world, but there was something in the simplicity of the message that drew me in. I replied yes. Their apartment was in the Lower East Side, in a red brick building that had seen better days. When Ryan opened the door, Sophie ran to hug my legs as if we'd been friends for years. "Emma, Daddy made mac and cheese just the way you like it." "The way I like it?" Ryan looked embarrassed. "She insisted you must like extra cheese. I hope she's right." The apartment was small but cozy, used but well-maintained furniture, Sophie's drawings on the walls, books stacked on every available surface. There was life there, something my $2 million penthouse never managed to capture. "Can I help with dinner?" "You can stir the sauce." Ryan handed me a wooden spoon. "Sophie, can you show Emma your drawings?" As I stirred the sauce, Sophie showed me every scribble, explaining elaborate stories behind each colorful line. One was about a princess who saved dragons instead of being saved by them. Another showed a little girl, a man, and a woman holding hands. "Who are these people?" I asked, pointing to the last drawing. "It's the three of us," Sophie said naturally. "You, me, and Daddy. We're a family now." I felt my stomach clench. Ryan stopped stirring the pot and looked at us, clearly worried about what I would say. "Sophie, Emma and I are just friends," he said gently. "But friends can be family too, can't they?" She looked at me with hopeful eyes. "My teacher said family is who takes care of you and loves you." "Your teacher is very wise," I managed to reply. During dinner, Sophie told me about school, about her friends, about how she wanted to be a vet when she grew up. Ryan shared stories about when he worked in construction before he started deliveries. There was a lightness to the conversation I had never experienced. "Daddy, tell Emma about when you had your company," Sophie innocently suggested. The atmosphere changed instantly. Ryan tensed, his expression closing off. "That was a long time ago, Princess. It doesn't matter anymore." But I felt it mattered. There was pain there, something he didn't want to relive. I changed the subject, asking about Sophie's plans for school vacation. After dinner, I helped Ryan with the dishes while Sophie watched cartoons in the living room. We worked in comfortable silence until he finally spoke. "Sorry about Sophie's question. She doesn't understand how things work." "You don't need to apologize. She's adorable. She got attached to you quickly. I hope you don't feel pressured." I looked at him, water dripping from my hands. What if I said I don't? Our eyes met, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink to just the two of us in the tiny kitchen. He moved closer, his hand lightly touching my arm. "Emma, story time!" Sophie came running in, interrupting the moment. "Emma, do you know how to read stories?" Ryan stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "Sophie, I'm sure Emma has important things to do." "Actually, I'd love to hear a story," I said, feeling more honest than I had in years. The three of us ended up squeezed on the small sofa, Sophie between us, as I read about a brave little girl who saved her kingdom. With each page, I felt Ryan's arm brush against mine, his breath changing when our voices mingled. When Sophie fell asleep, Ryan carried her to her room. I stayed alone in the living room, looking at the photos on the walls. There were many of Sophie at different ages, some of Ryan with her, but I noticed the complete absence of a maternal figure. "Does she ever ask about her mom?" I asked when he returned. "Sometimes." He sat beside me, leaving space between us. "Jessica left our lives when Sophie was 2. Drug addiction. Sophie doesn't remember much." That must have been hard. It was, especially after I lost the company. We had to move 3 times in 2 years, but look how strong she's grown. There was genuine pride in his voice. "You're an amazing dad, Ryan. I do what I can." The next day, I decided to do something I had never done. Confront my father about the company's business. I walked into his office without warning, throwing a folder full of documents onto his desk. "We need to talk about Mitchell Construction." He didn't even look up from the documents he was reading. "What company is that?" The company we bought and dismantled in 2018. Do you remember it now? William Richardson finally looked at me. Emma, we make dozens of acquisitions every year. I can't remember every small company we absorb. Small company? My voice went up an octave. They employed 50 people. Entire families depended on that work. And now those people work for bigger, more stable companies. It was a favor we did. Destroying their lives in the process. Since when do you care about operational details? He leaned back in his chair, studying me with renewed interest. Does this have to do with your new relationship? I felt my blood boil. Don't you dare make this personal. Everything is personal in business, Emma. You should know that by now. I want a complete list of all questionable acquisitions from the last 5 years, and I want to know exactly how we conducted each one. Why? Because I'm next in line for succession, and I won't inherit a company built on the ruin of other people. My father slowly stood up, walking around the desk until he was in front of me. Careful, Emma. Moral conscience is a luxury people like us can't afford. Maybe it's exactly the luxury we need to afford ourselves. The bomb exploded on a Thursday morning. I was in the office when my assistant rushed in, tablet in hand and panic on her face. Emma, you need to see this. The headline of the New York Business Journal screamed, "Billionaire heiress in calculated romance. Ryan Mitchell, single father in custody battle, may be manipulating relationship with Richardson Holdings CEO." My stomach dropped. The photo showed Ryan and me leaving the restaurant where we had dined 3 nights earlier, but the angle made it look like we were running from something. The caption suggested our relationship was an elaborate charade to help Ryan gain an advantage in court. How did they know about the custody battle? I murmured, still reading the devastating article. There's more. My assistant swiped her finger across the screen. Jessica Mitchell, his ex-wife, gave an exclusive interview. She claims Ryan has always been manipulative and that he's using you to appear more financially stable. Ryan's ex-wife's words sounded like pure venom. Ryan always knew how to impress powerful women. It doesn't surprise me that he found a billionaire willing to finance his new life. My daughter deserves a mother who truly cares about her, not someone being bought. My phone started ringing incessantly. Reporters, investors, board members, everyone wanting explanations. I turned off the device and rushed to the elevator. During the ride to Ryan's apartment, my mind spun in vicious circles. What if Jessica was right? What if I was just a rich idiot being manipulated by a desperate man? The $50,000 I initially offered seemed ridiculous now. What kind of person accepts that money if they don't have ulterior motives? When I arrived at the building, there was a small group of photographers at the entrance. I managed to get in through the back, climbing the stairs to his apartment. I knocked on the door harder than I intended. Ryan opened it, and immediately I saw that he had also read the news. His expression was a mixture of anger and resignation. Emma, I can explain. Explain what? The words came out harsher than I wanted. Explain why you didn't tell me about the custody battle? Explain why your ex-wife thinks you're using me? Because I knew you'd react exactly like this. He ran his hands through his hair, clearly frustrated. I knew you'd doubt me at the first sign of trouble. And why wouldn't I doubt you? You withheld important information. You made me look like an idiot in the press. I withheld it because I knew it would complicate things. But Emma, nothing I feel for you has anything to do with money or custody or anything else but you. How can I believe that now? Sophie appeared from the bedroom, still in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. Why are you shouting? The sight of her broke my heart. She didn't deserve to be in the middle of this mess. Sorry, sweetie, I managed to say, my voice softening automatically. Adults sometimes get upset. You're not going to be friends anymore. Her eyes filled with tears. Ryan knelt down in front of her. Sophie, why don't you go play in your room while Emma and I talk? But I don't want Emma to leave. Her tears were the last straw. I couldn't do this. I couldn't be responsible for breaking an innocent child's heart, especially when my own heart was breaking. I need to go, I said, avoiding looking directly at Ryan. Emma, please, don't let them win. Don't let the press destroy what we have. What we have? I laughed bitterly. I don't even know what we have anymore. Maybe it's better this way. You're running away, I'm being realistic. You're being a coward." His words hit me like a slap. I left the apartment without looking back, even though I heard Sophie crying and Ryan calling my name. The next 3 days were the worst of my adult life. I canceled all meetings, ignored calls from the board of directors, and locked myself in the penthouse like a recluse. The media continued to speculate about my relationship with Ryan, each article more invasive than the last. But the worst wasn't the public exposure. It was the constant feeling that I had lost something precious out of pure cowardice. Ryan's words echoed in my head, "You're running away." He was right. I had fled at the first sign of true vulnerability. Maxwell had accused me of being incapable of loving, and I was proving him right. On the second night, I found the drawing Sophie had given me, the one of the three of us as a family. It was folded in my bag, forgotten amidst the confusion of the past few days. Looking at those colorful stick figures, I realized that a 6-year-old understood more about love than I did. I tried to dive into work, but every decision reminded me of the conversation with my father about Mitchell Construction. Ryan had lost everything because of my own company's predatory practices, and yet he managed to love me. Meanwhile, at the first obstacle, I had doubted every word he said. My phone rang on the third night. It was him. "Hello?" My voice was hoarse from crying. "Emma?" Just my name, but the way he said it carried so much weight. "Jessica gave up." "What?" "Custody. She called today and said she's not going to fight for Sophie anymore. Apparently, the media attention scared her off, and she realized she's not ready to be a mother." I felt immense relief, immediately followed by guilt. "Ryan, You what? Are you going to tell me you still think I was manipulating you? That I orchestrated this whole media circus to gain an advantage in a battle that doesn't even exist anymore?" His voice was filled with hurt, and I deserved every word. "I was scared," I finally admitted. "Scared of what? That you really were using me, that I was just another rich idiot being fooled by a handsome man with a sad story. And now I know I'm just a rich idiot who's scared of being happy." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Sophie asks about you every day," he finally said. "She doesn't understand why you just disappeared. How can I explain to her that I'm a coward? You can start by showing up." I hung up the phone, my heart pounding. I knew what I needed to do, but first I had a pending conversation with my father. I walked into his office the next morning with an even thicker folder than before. "I've signed all the papers to reverse the questionable acquisitions of the last 5 years," I announced, throwing the documents onto the table. "It's going to cost the company about $200 million, but it's the price of doing the right thing." "Have you lost your mind?" "I found my conscience. There's a difference. Emma, you can't just give away $200 million because you feel guilty about dating a man who lost his company to us." "I can. And I will. And I'm not dating him. I pushed him away because I'm exactly the cold, calculating person you taught me to be." William Richardson studied me for a long moment. "What if I don't sign these papers?" "Then you'll have to fire me and explain to the board why your own daughter preferred to lose her job than be complicit in corrupt practices." "You're bluffing. Try me." He picked up a pen and signed each document with contained anger. "You'll regret this. The only thing I regret is taking so long to do what's right." I left his office knowing I had burned some bridges, but for the first time in years, I felt light. Now there was only one person I needed to make amends with, and she was 6 years old and had a heart bigger than mine. It took me 2 days to gather courage. 2 days writing and rewriting a letter that never seemed to capture everything I needed to say. Finally, I gave up on perfect words and wrote from the heart. "Ryan, you were right. I ran away. I ran because I'm afraid of anything I can't control, and what I feel for you and Sophie is completely out of my control. I've spent my whole life building walls to protect myself from pain, but in the process, I also protected myself from love. When Maxwell left me, I swore I'd never be that vulnerable again, that I'd never depend on someone else to feel complete. But you two changed that. Sophie with her purity and infinite capacity to love, and you with your patience, your quiet strength, and the way you care for her like she's the most precious thing in the world. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be brave, A chance to show that I've learned the difference between loving with fear and loving with courage. If you let me, I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you're worth more than any fear I might have. With all my love, Emma, I folded the letter and put it in an envelope along with something I had bought on the way, a small heart-shaped pendant that said Chosen Family on the back. It was for Sophie, but I hoped Ryan would understand the message. When I arrived at his building, my heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. I walked up the stairs slowly, each step weighing like a mountain. I stopped in front of the door, took 3 deep breaths, and knocked. The door opened, but it wasn't Ryan who appeared. It was a thin woman, disheveled blonde hair, green eyes that had once been beautiful but now looked tired. Jessica. You must be the famous billionaire, she said, looking me up and down with ill-disguised contempt. What a surprise. My stomach dropped. I'm sorry, I thought. Is Ryan home? He is. We were having a very interesting conversation about Sophie's future. She smiled, but there was something predatory about that smile. I've changed my mind about custody, but Ryan said you had given up. People change their minds, especially when they realize they might be losing something valuable. I felt a wave of panic. Jessica, please. Sophie needs stability. She loves her father. And now she has me too. Jessica moved closer, lowering her voice. Did you really think you could show up here and play family with a child who isn't yours? Sophie has a real mother. Where have you been for the last 4 years? That's none of your business. Sophie. Ryan's voice came from inside, and I heard small footsteps running. The little girl appeared, stopping abruptly when she saw me. Her eyes lit up, but then became confused, looking between me and Jessica. Emma! She ran to me, hugging my legs. You came back! Hi, sweetie. I managed to smile, even with a broken heart. How are you? Sad. Daddy said you were busy, but I knew you'd come back. Jessica cleared her throat loudly. Sophie, come here. I want to talk to you about our new life together. The little girl clung tighter to me. I don't want a new life. I like my life. Ryan finally appeared behind Jessica, and the look on his face told me everything. He was fighting a battle he didn't know how to win. Emma, he said, surprise and relief mingling in his voice. What are you doing here? I came to apologize. I showed her the letter. And bring something for Sophie. How sweet, Jessica interjected sarcastically. But as I was explaining, Sophie and I are moving to Seattle next week. My family has a business there, and I can offer her opportunities that, she looked around the small apartment, clearly don't exist here. I don't want to go to Seattle, Sophie said, her voice becoming small. I want to stay with Daddy and with Emma. You'll get used to it, sweetie. Jessica tried to take her daughter's hand, but Sophie hid behind me. That's when something inside me broke. Or maybe it mended. I looked at Jessica with all the authority I had learned in years of leading a corporation. How much? How much do you want to give up custody permanently? Ryan stepped forward. Emma, no. No, Ryan, let me do this. I looked directly into Jessica's eyes. You don't want to be a mother, you want money. So let's talk money. Jessica hesitated, and I saw greed gleam in her eyes. $1 million. Done. But with conditions. You sign legal documents giving up all parental rights, forever, and you never contact Sophie or Ryan again. Emma, Ryan tried to protest again, but I raised my hand. $2 million, Jessica countered, testing the limits. $2 million, I agreed without hesitation. You have 1 hour to decide. After that, the offer's off the table, and I'll use all my legal resources to ensure you never get near this family again. The silence that followed was tense. Jessica looked at Sophie, who was still clinging to me, then at Ryan, who watched her with a mixture of contempt and pity. She's not even your biological daughter, Jessica finally said, but her voice had lost its conviction. She chose to be, I replied simply. Jessica studied us for another moment, then sighed. Where do I sign? An hour later, Jessica was out of our lives forever, 2 million richer but infinitely poorer in everything that truly mattered. The lawyer I had called finished organizing the papers, and finally we were alone. Sophie was on my lap, playing with the pendant I had brought. What does chosen family mean? She asked. It means that sometimes the best families aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we choose, I explained, looking at Ryan over her head. People who decide to love and take care of each other. Like us? Like us. Ryan sat beside us on the couch. Emma, what you did today, I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me for protecting my family. Your family? I looked at him, finally ready to be completely honest. If you'll have me. Ryan took my hand, his fingers intertwining with mine. Emma, I love you. I love your strength, your vulnerability, the way you love Sophie like she's yours, but I don't want you to feel like you have to buy your way into our lives. I'm not buying anything. I'm investing in my happiness, in our happiness. Sophie looked up, her eyes shining. Does that mean you're going to live with us now? I laughed, tears finally falling freely. If you'll let me. Yes, Sophie shouted, jumping up to hug us both. Now we're a real family. 6 months later, our lives had found a rhythm I never imagined possible. We weren't living together yet. We decided to take things slow, especially because of Sophie, but we spent almost every day together. I had drastically reduced my workload, only working part-time at Richardson Holdings. The company was slowly recovering from the changes I implemented, but our reputation had significantly improved. I discovered that doing ethical business was not only possible, but profitable in the long run. Ryan had accepted a job in the logistics division of one of the companies I helped rebuild after reversing the predatory acquisitions. It was ironic, but somehow fitting. He was helping to mend some of the damage my family had caused. Emma, can you help me with my homework? Sophie asked, climbing onto the sofa beside me with a math book. Of course, sweetie. In the past few months, I had become Sophie's unofficial tutor. I found I had the patience to explain math problems for the 10th time, something I never thought I possessed. Ryan joked that I was a better teacher than him, but the truth was I simply loved every moment I spent helping her learn. This one's hard, she said, pointing to an addition problem. 2 plus 3 plus 5. It's so confusing. Let's think of it this way, I said, picking up some colored pencils. If you have 2 red pencils, then you get 3 blue ones, and then 5 more green ones. How many pencils do you have in total? Sophie counted carefully, using her fingers. 10! Perfect! Ryan appeared in the kitchen, drying his hands on a dish towel. Homework done? Emma helped me, Sophie said proudly. She's really good at math. She's good at a lot of things. Ryan looked at me with that smile that still made my heart race. Daddy, when is Emma going to move in here? Sophie asked with typical childlike frankness. Ryan and I exchanged glances. We had talked about it a few times, but always came to the conclusion that there was no rush. Why do you want her to move in here? Ryan asked. Because then you can get married and she can be my real mom. I felt my heart clench. Sophie had started calling me Mommy Emma a few weeks ago, and every time it moved me to tears. Sophie, Ryan said gently, what Emma and I feel for each other doesn't change whether we live in the same house or not. But I want us to be a real family. We already are a real family, I said, pulling her closer. Family isn't about where you live or what papers you sign. It's about loving and taking care of each other. Like when you saved us from the bad mom, I laughed softly. We were still working on therapy with Sophie about how to process everything that had happened with Jessica. Yes, sweetie, like when we decided we wanted to stay together forever. So when are you going to get married? Ryan almost choked on the water he was drinking. Sophie. What? People who love each other get married. That's how it works. I looked at Ryan, seeing panic and hope battling in his expression. In recent months, we had avoided talking about marriage, both still healing from past wounds. You know, I said slowly, maybe Sophie's right. Emma, Ryan warned me. No, listen. I stood up, walking until I was in front of him. I spent so long afraid to commit, to be vulnerable, that I almost lost you two. I don't want to waste any more time. I took his hands in mine. Ryan Mitchell, will you marry me? Sophie screamed with delight, jumping on the sofa. Ryan looked at me as if I had lost my mind. Emma, are you sure? I've never been so sure of anything in my life. But what if what? What if we're happy? What if we raise Sophie together? What if we build something real and lasting? I smiled, feeling tears of joy stream down my face. I'm willing to take those risks. Ryan pulled me closer, his hands framing my face. Then yes, I want to marry you. Sophie hugged us, and the three of us stayed there, holding on to each other as if we would never let go. Can I be the bridesmaid? Sophie asked, and we both laughed. You can be anything you want, I said. You're already the reason we found each other. 2 years later, I'm sitting in the garden of our new house, not the Manhattan penthouse nor the small apartment, but something in between, a place we chose together, watching Ryan teach Sophie how to ride a bike without training wheels. I can do it, Daddy. Look, Mommy Emma, no hands. My heart still warms every time she calls me Mom. Officially, I adopted her 6 months after the wedding, and seeing my name on her birth certificate was one of the most emotional moments of my life. Richardson Holdings is thriving under new ethical leadership. I found that when you treat people decently, they work better, are more loyal, and the profits end up being greater in the long run. Who knew? Watch the turn, I shout to Sophie, who waves at me before making a perfect loop. Ryan runs to me, throwing himself on the grass beside me. She's growing so fast. I know, sometimes I'm afraid to blink and miss something. You won't miss anything. We're here to stay. I look at him, still amazed at how life can completely change in a matter of months. Do you regret it, taking that $50,000? Best money I ever earned, he laughs. It bought me the happiness of my life. It didn't buy it. You earned it. Sophie stops in front of us, beaming with pride. See, I told you I could do it. You sure did. Ryan pulls her to sit with us on the grass. I'm so proud of you. We're proud, I correct. We're a team, remember? Sophie snuggles between us both. Forever? Forever, Ryan and I reply together. As the sun sets behind us, I realize Maxwell was wrong about one thing. I am capable of true love. I just needed to find the right people to love. Sometimes the best families don't come from blood or tradition, but from courageous choices and open hearts. Subscribe to the channel and leave your like to access more stories like this. And sometimes, all you need is $50,000 and the courage to trust a stranger with a kind smile and a daughter who draws families with crayons.